You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to Meatloaf Monday. It is, because it's always about the food, it seems like. Meatloaf Monday. I got a sound effect for that. Play it, man.
I think I'll try the meatloaf sandwich.
Do you know what that is?
Yes, meatloaf.
What is it? I'm only asking in case I have to describe it later to a doctor.
Look, it's nutritious. It's delicious.
Made out of meat. Add ketchup if you want. I couldn't care less.
Meatloaf Monday. Welcome to it. And that would be JP pushing buttons on the board. Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm great. We both survived this past week.
Oh, yeah, it was something else. Yeah, and in fact, there is definitely damage in our listening area, especially down around Winterboro, which is in our listening area down close to Sylacauga, Talladega, that area. Winterboro, 1 death and some serious structural damage to the school. I know that we had, right now, last I saw, we have 3 deaths statewide. But there's also a deep sigh of relief, which sounds awful to say that in conjunction with the damage and the deaths, like in places like Gordo and Winterboro and others. But it was also predicted to be much worse than it turned out.
Well, at least for Alabama, I know there was a big EF4 in Arkansas on Friday that destroyed. So I think Alabama maybe got the least of it, but Mississippi, Arkansas, and I think they got the brunt of it. So
it was a crazy batch of storms too.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you were out of town for the weekend, but here we didn't even see rain. Like, it didn't even have a drop of rain until somewhere around 8 or 9 o'clock on Saturday night.
Oh, where I was at Smith Lake, it got sketchy a little bit.
Did it?
It got really windy and really sketchy for about 30 minutes or so.
Like, y'all started thinking, is the storm shelter open?
Yeah, we started to, we may go in there. Yeah, but we're blessed that nothing came through there.
Well, I'm glad you're good. I'm glad. I hope all of y'all out there in the listening area are good, and we're thankful and prayerful going forward. All right, listen, I got a great show laid on for you. Coming up at the halfway point of the second hour, Emily Jones, the founder of Moms for Liberty in Alabama. And oh, by the way, she is also one of our podcasters with the Controversial Mom podcast. She will be on at halfway past the second hour. And then I guess I got a whole triple dipper just filled up with stuff. So hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. First out the gate, the deportation machine. Are y'all watching what's happening right now? Listen, I got a ton of stuff about this on my Twitter feed. I'm just saying, we are watching literally leadership in action. And oh, by the way, it's action, action, action. So the deportation machine, with what happened this past weekend, and the violent criminals being deported to El Salvador, yeah, it's a whole new day. Deportation machine, number 1, Triple Dipper. Number 2, Indivisible. Have you heard about this group? They're called Indivisible. Been around a few years, not many, just a few, just sort of stood up out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, it's as if they are the new Black Lives Matter. We're going to talk to Emily Jones about that at the bottom of the second hour. But yes, they are somewhat akin to having the newest version of Black Lives Matter doing its thing, stoking angst and anger. Indivisible, the new BLM, number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, a military reckoning. Y'all, there was stuff happening this past weekend. Nah, I mean, like a lot. We had strikes on terrorists. We had strikes on terrorist leaders. We, oh, by the way, also had changes in the policies that root wokeness out of the U.S. military. I'm going to say right now, we are seeing a constant trend towards a military reckoning here and with what we do abroad. So, yeah, that's number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, let me jump on into the Right Side Way opening monologue. I will remind you guys that Stan McDonald, attorney Stan McDonald at the a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee. He is the daily sponsor of the Rightside Way, and I'll tell you more about Stan here in just a few minutes. All right. So I was getting ready for the show, working on that dipper that's number 2 called Indivisible, the new BLM. And I got to say, in case you haven't noticed, there's actually an entire cottage industry right now built around what I would call manufactured outrage. Think about it. Manufactured outrage. Groups like BLM, Antifa, and others have been joined by a new group now called Indivisible. Indivisible is the latest band of charlatans taking money from George Soros to manufacture outrage and to foment discord. Supposedly, they're actually protesting in Huntsville today. I'm not sure if they did or not. Hadn't heard any news updates, but we'll check. We'll see. But one look at their website will tell you all you need to know. The so-called Indivisible Toolkit encourages people to march on their elected officials' offices. Tell them your demands. Tell them that you are outraged. That's their words, not mine. It's nothing but the creation and the channeling of the baser emotions. Anger, angst, fear, futility, desperation. And they make millions doing it. By telling people that the worst of their fears are realized unless and until they act out their frustrations, even to the extent of sometimes breaking the law. Recent reports right now are implicating Indivisible in the Tesla protests. I read a piece published in the Stanford Law Journal called The Outrage Industrial Complex. I didn't agree with everything the author said, but I did agree that there's a trend towards maximizing outrage without purpose because the stoker of the outrage is gaining from it. The author of that article, it was really good though, actually, The Outrage Industrial Complex. The author of that article said at one point, here's his quote, "The outraged themselves fall victim to the same corrosive anger they hope to direct at the power structure. We are all locked," he said, "in an arms race of outrage in which stalemate is the only possible outcome. And of course," he said, "stalemate favors the status quo. The expression of outrage is no longer a form of effective political protest. Instead, it's just an aesthetically debased form of entertainment." Wow. You break that down and what you really see is he's absolutely right. They claim to be trying to fix things that are outrageous, but they become outraged in the process of doing so. And they get into an arms race of outrage. And the next thing you know, they're not changing things at all. All they've done is become this kind of weird version of clickbait entertainment. Yeah, he's not wrong. Outrage loses something when it's flooding the airwaves, when there's no result. I'm going to go out on a limb here too and say that the focusing of anger or disappointment is never going to be a truly effective means for affecting change, without being coupled at least with one other key ingredient. If you want to be angry about something and get something done, you have to have it coupled with morality. Anger that is immoral is also unjust. Anger that is immoral is not likely to resonate with good people who need to be convinced to join the movement. Charlene and I were talking about this a while back. At some point, we were discussing world events and the former Biden administration's response to things and how frustrating it was to watch them dither along, afraid to offend even the worst offenders, equivocating on this, apologizing for that, working so hard to be inclusive they never took a stand for anything. She said that she had heard a pundit ask in regard to Biden, "Where's the moral outrage?" And my wife's response was epic. I said something about it, but then she said, "No, you got to have morals where you can have moral outrage." Wow. Nailed it. Nailed it. I mean, you look at the anger baiters. There's a sense of morality that's missing in them. I'm talking about things like decency. I'm not talking about inclusivity. I'm not talking about earnest beliefs. I'm talking about morality. The actual ability to differentiate between right and wrong, to know that some decisions or actions, regardless of your personal desires, they can still be immoral if you pursue them that way. I mean, like, for instance, I can decide that something is worth doing, but I am immoral if I steal your money to get it done. I can decide that I think something is important for the environment, but I am immoral if I force you against your will to take part in it. I can decide that I think kids should know things, but I am immoral if I force those beliefs over the wishes of the parents. So let me give you another example, just kind of out of the blue here. You ready for this? Remember the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? Stay with me here. It was a 1968 classic starring Dick Van Dyke, a musical. I used to love that movie as a kid, except for that one character that really creeped me out. He was simply known as the child catcher. Remember him? Man, he was creepy. Wore a long, colorful coat, crumpled black top hat, had a long pointed nose, and he skipped along with hands full of candy and a wagon decorated like a carnival ride. He would skulk around, ringing a little bell, calling for children, promising them free candy and ice cream and delightful treats if they'd step into his wagon. The dude was a full-on child trafficker with a handful of sweets. And yes, it was creepy. It was even creepier, though, when you realize that his deception and trickery was being played out on young children at the request of his government. Because in the movie, the king himself is the one who employed the child catcher, and the child catcher was very good at his job. He took pride in it. You see, the king didn't like children. They made him angry and afraid, but he chose an immoral solution to channel it. So we're watching right now in real life here as the anger industrial complex stokes fear and loathing toward Elon Musk. Why? Because he's aligned with their worst enemy, Donald Trump. So now you have Tesla dealerships being vandalized. You have Nazi swastikas being scratched into Tesla cars in parking lots. You have charging stations being burned. You don't like Musk? Fine. But when you couple your anger with immorality, it never goes well. And we can see it in the NGOs. We see it in the riots. We see it in the seizing of campus buildings. We see it in the takeover of city blocks, renaming them things like Chop Zone or Occupy Wall Street. The anger industrial complex stirs them up, and their immorality makes them act it out. And then there is the quiet anger, the other version. The quiet anger, the one that happens behind the scenes, coupled with immorality, when people try to act out their angry agendas in subversive ways. Like when closet activists pose as bureaucrats and decide that their trusted positions in federal government gets them the ability to do things like, I don't know, put transgender ideology in front of kids in schools. And no, I'm not talking about the open attempts to put guys in women's sports. I'm talking about sneakier stuff than that. Like the time that anger and immorality coupled together to create a mandatory quote-unquote survey that kids had to take to help explore their potential for transgenderism. Their potential for transgenderism. Here's how it works. You see, in 1992, Congress enacted what was known as the Sinar Amendment. It required states to pass state-level legislation to prohibit the sale of tobacco to minors. Okay. The Department of Health and Human Services was then mandated to begin withholding federal funds to states who did not comply. So over time, all the states began to enact their own laws, and they met the standards of Congress. And in 2011, the CDC began conducting what they called the annual National Youth Tobacco Survey, with target audience being middle school and high school students. All right, so they want to know if kids are smoking, right? Well, yes, at first. But in the last few years, the activists who masquerade as government bureaucrats, they realized they had a golden opportunity. They were already getting in front of kids on a congressionally mandated issue, so why not use that as a vehicle to get to kids on other things as well? Why not? It's important, right? They believe it's for the greater good, except they lacked a moral foundation to do it. They co-opted the National Youth Tobacco Survey, and they began using it to give actual instructive descriptions with follow-on questions about transgenderism for minors. You heard me. Like one of the questions, which actually read this way. It said, quote, sexual orientation is a person's emotional, romantic, and/or sexual attraction to another person. And there are many ways a person can describe their sexual orientation, many labels a person can use. Which of these options best describes your sexual orientation? And the options that were then given for sixth graders, where you can choose straight or heterosexual, gay or lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, queer, or asexual. If you go back to the beginning on the first page, it said it was a tobacco survey. Y'all, this reminds me of the creepy child catcher, the immoral deceiver, prideful kidnapper doing what his government sent him to do, walking around with hands full of candy trying to lure kids in. So yeah, back to the question of moral outrage. My sweet Charlene was right. You got to have actual morals before you can have moral outrage. And what I see from groups like Indivisible and other members of the outrage industrial complex, it tells me they don't qualify. They have anger, fear, and loathing, but no good decisions come from being steeped in just a cauldron of boiling emotions, especially when you couple it with a lack of a moral foundation like theirs. And that's a wrap with the Right Side Way. Yep, there you go. And by the way, we'll wait and see how things went today with the so-called Indivisible protest against Congressman Dale Strong. I think we're going to have him on the show tomorrow. But yeah, the calls were to go out there and show them your anger. Tell them about your outrage. Okay, maybe you ought to have some morals first. Get mad later. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, let me tell you guys real quickly about attorney Stan McDonald. So Stan McDonald is the sponsor daily of our Rightside Way monologue. He's also a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee, been practicing for over 30 years. And listen, I'm going to tell you right now, Stan is not just a lawyer. He's the kind of guy, yes, he can advocate for your legal needs, but y'all, I'm going to tell you, he's been an absolute warrior in the fray on the issues and the politics that ruffians care about. He is literally one of us. So yeah, attorney Stan McDonald, he has represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions over the years. He knows how to represent you in any local, state, or federal court. And I like to always say, if Stan McDonald is on your side, you're going to have no greater friend. And likewise, your adversary will have no greater foe. So here's his number. I'm about to give it to you. If you want to contact him, you need a lawyer in North Alabama, Stan McDonald. The law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man. Here's his phone number, 256-479-3020. That's 256-479-3020. And tell him you heard about it on Rightside Radio. And, oh, yeah. No representation made. The quality legal service before is great. The quality legal service support the lawyers. Always at the very end.
7.3.
7.3. Okay, good. I got a bunch of text messages. Text lines are indeed open. 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it or call it. Same one with both. Some of y'all are telling us how things went with your storm, and some are commenting on the monologue. Brian from Huntsville says, chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiree. That's the other movie, man. That's Mary Poppins. He says, sneaky thieves are happy in dastardly. Chimney chiroo, if you want to have outrage, you must have morals too. Well played, sir. John from Harvest says, Phil enjoyed the monologue with the recent revelations regarding the previous administration signing documents. The question I have is, do you think Biden staffers had to play rock, paper, scissors for the auto pen, or was it just first come, first serve? I think they had it right next to the Tasty Freeze machine and the coffee maker. You know, come on up and, hey, whoever used the last of the coffee, you got to make a new one. If you use up the ink in the auto pen, you got to fill it up. So yeah, that's gonna. I am hoping there's court action on this, because there should be. I mean, the idea that he may not have been cognitively aware of all the things that were being signed in his name, we need to know. Find me a whistleblower. Find me one. All it takes is one. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Whew, goes from like Huntsville on back to Chattanooga. I mean, like from Tuscaloosa on back to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn, stretching across the border to Fort Benning. Yes, I called it Fort Benning. And big old patches of northwest Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. All right, going to stay caught up with those text messages as best I can. David from Florence said, the Federalist, Heritage Foundation, and Judicial Watch websites have detailed articles about lawfare and the courts. Okay. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And yes, they do, and I use them quite often. Red from Tony, Alabama says, it's corned beef Monday for St. Patrick's Day. Okay. John from Huntsville, you about to say something? What you got?
I forgot to wear my green today. Hopefully we don't get pinched before the show's over.
Well, let's see. All right. John from Huntsville says, Phil, spectacular monologue. Also, Phil, did you see Auburn lose to Tennessee? I'm aware. Yes, fully. And JP, did you see Alabama get absolutely demolished by Florida? By the way, JP says, I thought you pre-recorded off the bench episode was very entertaining, but I miss being able to text into the show. I just want you to know that I've already got my ESPN March Madness bracket filled out. Feeling pretty good.
It will be a progressive filling out for me over the next.
Oh, you're not going to commit in advance on it, huh?
Well, no, I just I fill it out. I gotta really focus and fill out perfectly, So it's probably gonna take me up until Friday to have a bracket done.
What did that CNN guy say? It was 1 in a quintillion of getting a perfect bracket.
1 in 9 quintillion or something like that. You had a much greater chance of winning the lottery and getting killed by a shark than winning a much greater chance. Yeah.
What? There's only X number of teams. How can the odds be that high?
64 teams, a different outcome per game, and then different outcome of that outcome, and then you go down the rabbit hole. It's hard.
Holy smokes! All right, but which ones have the prettier uniforms? That's how you decide.
I guess that is. For some people, I guess. Yeah.
Allie from Athens says, "You were not kidding about the child catcher." Yes. Colonel Williams, she says, super creep on steroids. I always thought that was like one of the creepiest characters ever put on any kind of, and it was a kid's movie. And it says, in other great news, Limestone County Sheriff's Department arrested 9 traffickers yesterday. Oh, awesome. Interestingly, they were of every age and color. Diabolical DEI, I would say. Wow, no kidding. Allie, thanks. Marie from Madison, I'm amazed at the people who were mad because the weather in Alabama did not turn out to be as bad as predicted, even sent hateful messages to meteorologists like James Spann. I and many others are praising the Lord because we actually held prayer calls and meetings throughout the week, crying out for God's mercy on our region. And I know that because of who he is, his faithfulness, he heard and answered our prayers. Listen, Charlene and I prayed over every corner of our property. We did. We stood right there on the back deck and we just talked over the entire property, prayed over it, and then prayed over where our friends and family were, and then prayed over our community and our state. And I really feel like, I really feel like that there was intervention. Because there were times when James Spann would go, okay, look at that right there. That just happened. All right, everybody get to your safe place. And then a few minutes later, he'd go, well, watch right here as it fades away. I mean, and I know tornadoes do that. But it also just felt right. But there was still damage. I think there was something like 15 tornadoes that sparked at some point, confirmed on the ground.
In Alabama alone.
Yeah,
the whole line had up to 50 or something.
And
Friday to Saturday.
Yeah. And Winterboro made national news. I saw it up on Fox a minute ago. If you're familiar with the schools in Winterboro, beautiful old schools built out of stone and a lot of damage. Fritzy from Huntsville says, whole pack pasture was flooded, about 15 acres. How's the saying go? When you get lemons, you make lemonade? Fritzy from the Arsenal. And by the way, Phil, the question last week, I'm a male with no pronouns. Thank you. Could you put that up there like under his name? Put Fritzy, parentheses, male. No pronouns. Now we know. I don't have to say thank you, ma'am, or anything else. I just say, Fritzy, and know exactly who I'm talking to. And then lastly, Bruce from Springville says, in reference to Biden's auto pen, hopefully it'll all blow up in the open and all the pardons will be declared void. I agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, there's always that suspicion that that's the kind of thing that was happening. But if we find out that people are usurping the authority of the presidency for their own agenda items, for their own nuances, or just for the matter of perpetrating a fraud, the public needs to know that. And we need to know it not just in that we see it now and we want action taken retrospectively. We need to know it for the prospective action that should be taken. Like, how do you safeguard it? What policies will be in place from now on? Do we do away with the auto pen altogether? I mean, it's the president of the freaking United States. You can't just get the papers to him to sign. So the fact that we have to use an auto pen, I think that was only designed for when there are massive amounts of documents and he has been given the authority and he writes something down that says, I hereby authorize the use of the auto pen for these particular documents. One signature of his, followed by others of that machine. It's not meant to be the substitute president. It's not meant to be the automaton that just runs the world. And that's exactly what was happening. And it's messed up. I mean, it ticks me off. I've got a signature stamp at my law firm. It never gets used unless my secretary says, you're going to be out, but that letter needs to go out today. Do you want me to go ahead and use your stamp? I'll say, yes, please do. But beyond that, I sign everything myself. I'm not the president of the United States, and I get that. But you know what? I think the burden is higher on the presidency than it would be on me and my law firm. I mean, he's running the friggin' free world.
Well, at least if he's going to auto-pen it, at least tell him what he's auto-penning.
And the fear is they never did that either.
Because, I mean, we talked about his interaction with Mike Johnson where he was completely oblivious to stuff he did. So, like, as long as he was given the okay and, like, you know, for what he's signing, that's still not right, but that's a lot better than him not even knowing what he's supposedly signing in the first place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, hey, listen, I'm gonna kick off Dipper number one here. Because this one, in my opinion, is one of the biggest stories, not just of the weekend, but it's one of the biggest stories perhaps of the year. And it's getting some play, it's getting some airtime, but it's also getting a lot of, you know, controversial mishmash that is not always accurate. So I'm going to try and give you the common sense, conservative / lawyer / pundit Phil Williams description of what just happened. So if you're not familiar, here's the thing. Let me jump in. Number one, triple dipper, deportation machine. All right, the deportations are fully and completely underway. Something like 18,000 deportations by the Trump administration in the first 60 days. That's pretty good. It's not where they want to be, but it's pretty good. But what we're also looking at is a significant new agenda item when the president came out and declared that certain gangs, cartels, and otherwise are enemies of the state. Using a law from 1798, y'all, from 1798, called the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. It allows him to deport without a hearing and with reduced measures for due process anyone who he has deemed to be an enemy of the state that is in some way attempting to invade and do harm to the United States. So what did President Trump do? Well, the law is still on the books, right? The law is still there. It's been there since 1798. Well, okay. If it hasn't been revoked, then it's still active law. Now, you can look at something and say, written for a different time, no longer applies, but you have to challenge it first. You can't just say, well, that doesn't apply anymore because it's old. It doesn't work like that. In fact, there's a great Tom Homan. I love Tom Homan. I'm getting to be more a fan of Tom Homan every day. Tom Homan was asked by a reporter, I think this morning, flat out asked, you're using a 200-year-old law. Tom Homan just looked at him and said, it's not as old as the Constitution, and we still pay attention to that, don't we? And he turned around and walked off. The man's right.
It's a 14-second clip if you wanted to play it.
Oh, you got that?
I got it right here.
Play it, man.
Let me cue it up. There's.
You say to those who claim you're using a 200-year-old law to circumvent due process?
An old law? It's not as old as the Constitution. We still pay attention to that, don't we?
But some would say this is...
How many more terms do you plan on?
She's walking away. The only thing missing was munching an apple again.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that, he just walked past a whole bunch of protesters the other day just munching an apple like he could care less. But so this past weekend, I believe it happened on Friday night, the Trump administration got 238 Tren de Aragua members and 21 MS-13 members and deported them to El Salvador. El Salvador, you might say. Why El Salvador? Well, I'll tell you why. Because El Salvador's president, Bukele, am I pronouncing that right? How do you pronounce his name? Bukele?
I think it's Nayib Bukele, maybe?
Bukele.
I don't know.
Okay. Sounds African, but it's not. But anyway, El Salvador's president has been doing epic work to clean up his own country. They have gone from being one of the murder capitals of the world to one of the safest in all of the hemisphere. So how did he do that? Well, he had one weekend where he took office, and soon thereafter there was a weekend where there were 87 murders, cartel-related, and he was sick of it. So he declared a state of emergency. He built a new prison. This prison is, I'm going to describe it for you in more detail, but it's called the Sikot prison. And this prison is harsh, and this prison is designed to break their will. And he began carting away these murderous cartel MS-13 Tren de Aragua style members and locking them up. And suddenly the nation was safe again. They had a 91% decrease in homicides nationwide. So the Trump administration contacted President Bukele and said, "Hey, what do you think if we start sending you some of these honchos? We'll box them up for you and pack them on down." And he said, "Send it." So on Friday, 238 Tren de Aragua members, 21 MS-13 gang members were deported from this country, and they went down there to join thousands who have already been deported. But these are criminal aliens, which are now going to the Sikot prison, where they will have their will broken. And listen, if you haven't seen the video itself is epic. And I would encourage you, go to my Twitter feed. If you're on X, go to @SinPhilWilliams. You can also see it on our Facebook page, which is also @SinPhilWilliams on Facebook, and check it out. It is now posted. There's about a 6-step thread that I've got on there. It starts off with that video of when they arrived, and I mean, I'm talking about dragging them off the plane, forcing their heads down between their knees, shaving their heads while everybody watched, shaving off their beards if they had one, stripping them down, putting them in nothing but a white T-shirt and a pair of white shorts and white socks, and then with one man on each arm and their legs and arms shackled, taking them off to the cages, where they will live on nothing but frijoles and rice for the next however so long.
I'll add this about Bukele too. There's a clip out there of him describing these gangs like Tren de Aragua, MS-13 and such, and talked about how rampant the satanic worship is within these gangs. Yeah. And like, these aren't just, illegal immigrants and you're racist if you send them out. These are demonic, satanic gangs that literally want nothing but to just kill everybody in sight. So they
create havoc.
Like it, which is what drives me nuts with this judge thinking he's going on I'm bucking the system, bring them back. Do you realize the people that
we haven't gotten to that point yet?
You know, so
you're taking off of that.
Sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole.
That's right. That's after the break. Let's take the break right now. I'm going to come back and tell you what a judge tried to do. Wow, and it's caused all kinds of outcry. Can he do it? Can a judge stop the Trump administration from deporting criminals? Well, he tried, and I'll tell you what happened. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. Just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. Hey, shout out to one of our right side ruffians. He's an OG ruffian, racing from Hawaii, who tunes in often. And he just posted on the Facebook live stream that by virtue of Starlink, while he is in flight from Hawaii to Los Angeles, he's able to watch it. So hit me some applause and let's give the man a thumbs up. Racing, we're glad you are in the audience, brother. All right, let's do some stuff here. So I was talking about the deportation machine. I'm trying to lay the foundation for what's happening next, and I'm going to give you a few insights on this that I don't think anybody else has made. But I'll first tell you, so Friday, with 200 and almost 60, 62, I think it is, Tren de Aragua and MS-13 gang members being shipped down to the notorious Sikot prison in El Salvador. Oh, by the way, a U.S. federal district court judge tried to stop it. He literally held a hearing, and I'm going to give the breakdown of the hearing in a minute. He literally held a hearing in which he tried to invoke injunctive relief on behalf of the plaintiffs who were complaining on behalf of these gang members. He tried to establish an injunctive. Back up, Phil. Use your words. He tried to establish an injunction and to order that the planes either A, not be able to take off, or B, turn around in mid-flight and come back. Didn't do it. The Trump administration said, well, you're too late. They're already outside of U.S. airspace. You have no jurisdiction to turn them around. And the president of El Salvador, and I love this, like more than I could possibly tell you I love this. The president of El Salvador tweeted out a headline showing that the judge had tried to order the plane to turn around, and all the president of El Salvador said was, oopsie, too late. Just give me some laughter or something. That is epic. That is just, that's the president of El Salvador saying, oopsie, too late. So, yeah.
It's not even his country, by the way.
No.
Like he's taking them into his country from another country, and it's still, poking fun at him.
Although some of them were wanted in El Salvador. I think the MS-13 members, if I'm not mistaken, were wanted, and some of them were very high value targets, like upper level leadership that they'd had a desire to get locked away for a while. But not the bulk of them.
I guess my point is we have a foreign president who cares more about our borders than our own judges.
Oh, wow. So this judge, Judge Boasberg, what was his thinking? Well, apparently he's questioning whether or not the Trump administration is allowed to use the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Because had the president not invoked that and declared these to be enemy combatants, in essence, then they would have additional rights of due process and appeal, and they could not be just deported without going through all the hearings that are attached to that. I mean, the process would have been lengthy, and this is a new and different day. This is like putting in the express lane for deportation here. So yeah, that happened. Now, what do we know about Sikot Prison? Well, Sikot Prison is no fooling, y'all. Watch the video on my Twitter feed. This is legit. Sikot is the notorious terrorism confinement center, they call it. It houses the country's most dangerous criminals. It's one of the largest prisons in all of Latin America. Has a capacity to hold up to 40,000 inmates. They set them up, by the way. It's got like 57 or 58 acres of ground with 8 cell blocks. And the cell blocks are just tiered metal bunks. No mattresses, no bedding, no windows, 2 toilets. A bunch of guys have to share. And a couple of water basins. Inmates are confined in there for up to 23 and a half hours a day. They're given 30 minutes outside for exercise. And that's it, in a controlled area. And they're going to eat the same thing every day. Beans, rice, and pasta with no meat. Served without any variation. That's it. And they also, by the way, are allowed no visitors, no phone privileges, and the prison actually has a cell phone signal blackout area that extends up to 1.5 miles around it so they can get no bootleg communication devices in. So this is the last place they want to go. They come in there, and oh, by the way, they also split them up. So you're not going to have a bunch of Tren de Aragua leaders with a bunch of their own soldiers controlling a cell block. They split them up, and they don't give them an opportunity for that kind of fraternization. It's amazing what's just happening. And that all happened on Friday. And there's more to come. And when we get back, I'm going to play you a video from Tom Homan again that is, oh my word, it's more of what you want. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live from the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international, and oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2. We're still in this Dipper number 1 deportation machine, and I got an audio we're going to play for you here momentarily. What'd you have on that? You said you had something came up too. What was that?
We got a comment on our X live stream from Kip. It says, he says, from a meme, stranded astronauts thank Musk and Trump for their rescue. However, a federal judge is looking to block and deport them back to space.
God. That's classic. That also it just smacks of where we are right now too.
It's like it's funny. It's funny because it's true, unfortunately.
Now listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. There's a couple things I think I need to cover down here. I am not a disrespecter of judges, and I'll go on the record and say I do not want the Trump administration to make it a habit of disregarding judicial orders. I don't think they did in this place. I think they were correct in that the action was already underway and that the judge's order was after the fact. You can't turn back what has already happened. The judge could order that what happened shouldn't happen, but he can only rule prospectively when it comes to injunctions. Injunctions are to prevent things from happening, not to reach back and stop what's already happened from happening. So there's that. Now, the judge can sanction someone if he's already issued it. Like, for instance, now the judge could say, if you do it again, I'm going to sanction you. How he would do that, I don't know. But the reality is the Supreme Court of the United States is probably going to have to rule on this. Does the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 apply? And I think arguably it does. Why do I say that? Because the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 has been used multiple times. Now, not always for the right, in retrospect, sometimes it was rough. Like the incarceration of Japanese American citizens in World War II, that was under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. And I think it was an overreach. You look back on it and you go, oh, wow, y'all, really? Every American-loving person of Japanese descent, you incarcerated them? I mean, you look back and go, what? This is not that, though. These are organized criminal and cartel actions that have invaded our country and abused our systems and come here illegally to commit more crimes, and they have now been declared enemies of the state. So the only question is, do you have to have a uniform on with a patch on your sleeve to be declared a true enemy of the state? And I don't think so. I believe the Trump administration knuckled down on this, got their review and got it in order, and did what they had to do. Let me find real quick before we play the Tom Homan clip. I've got a exclusive on the timeline. Here it is. I pulled this off a website called justsecurity.org. So justsecurity.org says, here's how things went on Friday. 5 o'clock p.m. 5 o'clock p.m. This is late. This is an emergency hearing. It's an after-hours hearing on a Friday afternoon. Judge Boasberg asked the government attorney, that's the Trump administration attorney, whether or not deportations were imminent in the next 24 to 48 hours. The government attorney says he doesn't know, but he cannot confirm or contest whether it's happening at that time. I mean, this is not like it's out there. There's a bit of operational security going on. The ACLU attorney tells Judge Boasberg they're aware the U.S. government's very rapidly moving people to planes to El Salvador. Why the ACLU attorney knew that, I don't know. So obviously Tom Homan believes there was a leak. We'll talk about that in a minute. That's at 5 o'clock. Before 5:22, though, right before 5:22, in response, Judge Boasberg ordered the hearing to take a break so the government attorney could obtain official information on what was happening and set the hearing to begin again at 6 o'clock. So they took a break. At the same time, at 5:45, the flight took off from Harlingen, Texas, to San Salvador, El Salvador. At 6 o'clock, the hearing resumed. Somewhere around 6:50, at 6:50, the judge issued a ruling from the bench for the government to turn around any planes that were carrying non-citizens subject to the Enemy Aliens Act presidential proclamation saying any plane containing those folks that's going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States. He also said this is something you need to make sure it's complied with immediately. Guess what? The Trump administration said pound sand. They're already outside of U.S. airspace. You can't reach back and change that which has already happened. So they didn't. Now, Tom Homan was asked about this. Got the audio clip? I'm going for audio clip number 1, if you don't mind. Actually, it's like 1.2 since you had that up a minute ago. That was pretty cool. Tom Homan interviewing with Lawrence Jones on Fox, talking about this very thing. Go ahead and play it.
Trump treated them as enemies, and we did exactly what we should have done. Again, President Trump is going to make this country safe again. He's going to do it one illegal alien at a time. And this weekend, we did 261.
So, Tom, what's next? Because I'm getting a little worried about the manpower. These guys they have to be tired. You got 30 guys in the stack going on different busts every single day. You're going to run out of money. It doesn't look like you're getting support from the Democrats on this. You're going against the judges now. What's next?
Another flight. Another flight every day. Teams are going to be out there every day. Every day, the men and women of ICE are going to be in the neighborhoods of this nation arresting criminal, illegal alien, public safety threats, and national security threats. Lawrence, you're not going to stop us. We made a promise to the American people. The President Trump has made a promise to American people. We're going to make this country safe again. I wake up every morning loving my job because I work for the greatest president in the history of my life, and we're going to make this country safe again. I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
Yeah.
You got to love that. So, yeah, what's next? Another flight. Now, that being said, I need to touch on something that I have not seen covered by anybody else. Because what you're watching right now is the manner and means by which military members are taught to handle POWs. Truthfully. So as an Army officer, I can tell you that we were always taught in the securing of enemy combatants, there are what we call the 5 S's. Search, segregate, safeguard, silence, and speed to the rear. Search, segregate, safeguard, silence, and speed to the rear. It was ingrained in us. We had to go through training. It was one of those things they would quiz you on. What in the event of POWs, enemy combatants taken on the battlefield, what do you do? The 5 S's. You first search them. You make sure you know what they've got on them. You take all the intel you've got. You get everything. You segregate them. What does that mean? Well, you split them up. You don't let the hierarchy be with the foot soldiers so they can't give them direction on what to do and how to resist. You also don't want them to get their stories together lined up. And then, oh, by the way, you don't want them to be able to organize effectively. That's exactly what's happening right now in Secot Prison. They split them up intentionally with an inability to organize under their own gang affiliations. You safeguard them. What does that mean? Well, first of all, you provide security for yourself by making sure that they are detained correctly. You don't mess around with it. There's no pussyfooting around here. You're going to shackle them. You're going to bind them. You're going to make sure that they don't have the ability to escape. And you also are protecting them at the same time. That's exactly what's been happening on all of these. They have been efficiently detained. They have been efficiently and firmly transported. And when they arrived on scene, go watch the video I've got posted on my Twitter and Facebook right now. They are offloaded, and y'all, I mean, they were manhandled. They were herded like cattle, and I don't mean that lightly. You watch the video, it's epic. And then the next one is silence. What is that? You don't allow communications. You don't allow them to communicate with each other. You don't allow them to communicate with outside. And what did they do at Secot Prison? They made sure they have entire cell phone blackouts in the area. You can't smuggle in a phone and get to talk to somebody. You don't get visitors. You're not allowed to communicate to the outside world and give directions to people out there to conduct operations the way you want. And then the last one, what is the last one? Well, the last one of the 5 S's is you literally speed them to the rear. What does that mean? Taking an enemy combatant, you don't hang around with them. You don't tote them around with you. You get them transported to the rear collection point so they can be processed as POWs and any intel gathered. That's exactly what's happening now. They are speeding them out of the country. They're not playing. They're doing the 5 S's. So while this judge is looking at this and saying, well, you know what I see? I see a violation of due process, and I'm not sure you can use the Enemy Combatants Act. Well, he may have a right to question that. And I do believe we're going to have to get that resolved so that we can move forward without other judges stepping in the way. But the truth of the matter is, they are being handled using the 5 S's that we're trained in the military to use for enemy combatants. Oh, by the way, that's because they were named as such under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. So how about that? You got a little bit of lawyer feel, a little bit of Army feel mixed together. This is what we're seeing right, and this is, by the way, exactly what we voted for. This is exactly what we voted for. We did not vote for more processing and we're going to hold them and make sure they have all the right food, and we're going to give them all kinds of special accommodations, and they're going to have rights under the law, and they're going to have appeals that will last for 15 years, and they're going to screw that. You came into our country with your violent gangs and cartels trafficking people, trafficking drugs, murdering, raping, establishing mayhem, subverting entire city blocks, in some places like Aurora, Colorado, taking over apartment complexes, just basically doing whatever you felt like doing because the last administration had no kahunas to deal with it. And now, by God, there's a new sheriff in town. Now it's the OK Corral. Now you just stepped one step too far, and justice came back. And guess what? It came back hard. And old boys are now being shipped off to the place they don't want to be. The judge may not like it, and Judge Boasberg may have to deal with it. And guess what? The Trump administration may have to deal with Judge Boasberg, and I get that. But Judge Boasberg was wrong to say, turn your planes around in midair. He was way outside of his bounds. He's going to have to rule on the merits of the case sometime soon as to whether we can continue to do this. And then it's going to get appealed all the way up because one side or the other is going to appeal it all the way up to SCOTUS, and we'll see if SCOTUS takes it up. But there is already legal precedent for this. And I don't mean like it's happened before we've used it. I mean like there have been lawsuits before to determine whether we can use it. This is absolutely what we voted for. And there's no doubt in my mind this is a legal fight worth having. Why? Because we voted for this. We wanted this as a people. This, in fact, is a mandate. One of the biggest issues in the election season was this very thing. And when you have Americans being trounced on and killed and, their lives destroyed because the Biden administration allowed these criminals in and gave them the run of the farm. Well, guess what? Those days are over. And the Trump administration is fixing it. And thank you, by the way, to President Bukele from El Salvador. And the Trump administration sent him a major thank you, too, and said, we will not forget this. All right, more of this. We're going to take some text messages when we get back and clean things up. Coming up bottom of the hour, we'll switch gears and go to talking about Indivisible, the new Black Lives Matter, with our friend Emily Jones calling in. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Pulling pins on truth grenades in here. All right, so something else you might want to know when you're having those water cooler conversations or talking to your friends at Sunday school and you want to sound like you really got it going on, I'm going to give you some more information you might want to know about this Aliens Enemies Act of 1798. So first of all, know this. It is still existing law. Anybody who says otherwise is wrong. Do laws sometimes become outdated? Yes, but they're on the books until they're not. There's that. So until they are either reversed, abrogated, or modified by legislative action, they are still the thing. So the idea that a member of the media would ask Tom Homan, but aren't you using a law that's very, very old, like 200 years old? His point was perfect. He said, it's not as old as the Constitution, and we still pay attention to that. So yeah, the Constitution. It's still existing law, right? Dates back quite a while. 1780s, I believe? The bottom line is this. The Alien Enemies Act of 1798. It does grant that the President of the United States will have absolute authority to detain and deport those who he believes have wrongfully entered our country with evil intent if they have been declared under the auspices of that law to be enemies of the state. Some would think that means, it's only like, if it's like an army, like you caught a bunch of Mexican army guys running across trying to raid a border town. No, we're not talking Pancho Villa here. And the cases that I could give you is this. I'm going to caveat by saying I've not read the case. I'm going off a citation, but the case is Ludecky v. Watkins. Ludecky v. Watkins, Ludecky, Ludecky v. Watkins. It's a Supreme Court case from the late 1940s. It's after World War II. It doesn't relate to the Japanese incarceration. It relates to one German individual who was in the United States illegally, had been here since the 30s actually, but he was deemed to be a threat to the United States. And under the Alien Enemies Act, he was deported in 1947, something like that. Anyway, the bottom line is it appealed all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, and the Supreme Court ruled in Ludecky v. Watkins explicitly that not only can the president deport these legal foreign residents, even if they weren't members of a foreign army, but that the courts also had no authority to even review the president's decision to do so. Here's a quote from the Supreme Court. The Alien Enemy Act precludes judicial review of the removal order. You're not hearing that talked about much, but that apparently is the law. So I think that the Trump administration has every right to pursue what it's doing. I think the court has every right to question it, and I think the court will have to yield to Supreme Court precedent that says in the event that the president has dotted his I's and crossed his T's, there's really nothing the courts can do. I'm saying deport them and deport them now. Get them out of here. All right, I got a bunch of text messages, and I'll have to get to those here in a little bit. You guys are amazing. We're going to come back after this break, and we're going to have Emily Jones. We're switching gears. We're going to be talking about the new BLM. Who is this? Yes, the new Black Lives Matter. What are they? They're called Indivisible. That's their name, Indivisible. They're also funded by Soros. Oh, they're also not rioting, but protesting in Huntsville today. Who are these people? What's their game, man? What do they want to do? Well, if you heard my monologue earlier in the show, you know that I think they're part of the anger industrial complex. They're the ones who literally out there, that's what they do. Without a true sense of morality, they just foment anger and discord. And they in their outrage, they go and they demand things. And you will hear us. Don't you know? You work for us. I got news. It doesn't work like that. There's still decorum and there's still expected behavior in a civil society. And you don't just march on someone's office and demand they meet with you. They might have other things going on and other constituents they're trying to serve. But all that to say, we're going to talk with Emily Jones about what she's discovered about this group called Indivisible that is all over the nation and apparently even in Huntsville, Alabama. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all don't talk about this show. Goes from Huntsville all the way back over to Chattanooga. I mean from Tuscaloosa all the way back over to Gadsden. I mean all the way down to that prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn. And yes, straight across to Fort Benning. I called it Fort Benning. And big old patches of North Georgia. And oh, by the way, Mississippi. Thrown in just for good measure. All right, we're going to the phones right now, so we're switching gears. I've talked about the deportation machine for a while. Let me just jump into Dipper number 2 right now. There's a group out there. Earlier in the show, if you heard my monologue, I branded it as part of the Outrage Industrial Complex. And this new group, I say new, they're not super new. They're a few years old, but they're really starting to perk up. Why? Because our friend Emily Jones says they are like the new BLM. So if you're not familiar with Emily Jones, you should be. She's the founder of Moms for Liberty in Madison County, Alabama, the first Moms for Liberty chapter in the state. And oh, by the way, she's also one of our podcasters. She has the Controversial Mom podcast that came out on Sunday, last night. You can check it out on our rightsidemedia.org. Enough of me talking. Let's bring her in. Emily Jones, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are y'all?
We are good. We're good. Always glad to have you on, and still super glad you're one of our content contributors. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm loving it.
Well, we are too. You do a good job. And by the way, folks, her podcast is called The Controversial Mom, which fits because she's always out there rabble-rousing in the right way, though. Hey, so Emily, let me ask you this. Indivisible, the new BLM, who are these people? What do you know about them? And is it true they were protesting today in Huntsville?
Yeah, yes, they were out loud and proud today. So I'm still learning about them. They've just kind of popped up on my radar, I guess, about 2 weeks ago, because they were holding an event here in Huntsville, and it was, of all places, at a church, talking about their progressive ideas and how they really and truly just hate Trump and hate Musk and all the things. But the local news covered it, shocking. Our leftist media would cover such a thing, but they did. So I just started paying attention to them, and then they ended up canceling a Republican event this past weekend because there were, I guess, concerns of protests at that event.
Is that what that was? It was the breakfast they usually have on Saturdays, and so they really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they never came out and said it was indivisible, but, I could piece things together and then obviously just talk around town. But apparently they've really started threatening to protest all across the country. Like, I've heard that through multiple people with congressional ties, that they're very activated all across the country, and they're hyper-focused on congressmen and women, which is a fascinating aspect to me.
Congressmen and women?
Well, like congresswomen,
congresswomen,
like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, like they're not going after senators. It's just members in the House. It's very odd, but whatever. Yes. But yeah, so I started digging into them and then started seeing more and more about how they're tied to George Soros and just all this dark money. But then they claim that they're just a grassroots movement with thousands of chapters all across the country. So it's very interesting. They're tied to the Tesla dealership attacks. There was some other protest that I saw earlier today that they were tied to. So that's why I say they're the new BLM, is they're very violent people and they have dark money supporting them, and they're everywhere. They're just paid agitators everywhere you go.
Yeah. And I wonder, when you said this is the new BLM, I mean, for a while there, BLM was the leftist progressive darling. They could do no wrong. They could get whatever they wanted. People threw money at them, and they basically were fomenters of anger everywhere they went. It was all about show them your outrage, show them your anger. It was going to be burning and looting, and that was okay. Are you saying that you think this is the replacement for that?
I think so. BLM kind of faded off into the distance, never to be heard of again after they got caught stealing money.
Yeah.
But they got to have something. Yes. They've got to have some group that's out in front doing all the violent things of the Democratic Party that they won't own up to publicly. And that's kind of where this group's headed. I mean, they've been physically attacking these Tesla dealerships and all sorts of crazy things. They're protesting all over the place. So it just seems they're headed that way. They're, like I said, they're obsessed with Trump and Elon. I mean, their mission on their website says that they exist to combat Trump's presidency.
Yeah, in fact, and I saw some of the buzzwords on their website. I went to it too. They have a thing called the Indivisible Toolkit, which was pretty interesting. But they use all the terms I talked about. They're all about show them your outrage. Make your demands known, and it's belligerence. It's a lack of professionalism. It's a lack of decorum. It's a lack of civil order. It's all about just basically mayhem and show them your anger, which is never going to wind up working out really well.
No, not at all. I mean, and you touched on it last hour, talking about just how busy people are. So we've talked to Congressman Barry Moore, who's out of South Alabama, right? We're friends with his wife, and we were talking to her a couple weeks ago, and she was talking about how just crazy busy they are, that they're constantly in D.C. So, I just know through that Dale's not here in town. He's very busy, and when he is here, he's very busy with his limited time at home. So their approach to just forcing him or attempting to force him to do a town hall based on their schedule, it's just not going to get you anywhere. It's just going to make them much more resistant to trying to schedule something when you're constantly being berated. So
this is what I saw.
I don't think they're going to get far.
I don't think so either. And this is what I saw. People who think that works, let me just go ahead and explain life to you. It doesn't work. It only works if the other side is intimidated by you. And most of the time, sending these thousands of carbon copy emails that all say the same thing with a different email address attached to it, because all they're doing is cutting and pasting, and dropping leaflets, all over the place, and storming your doors and raising Cain and interrupting your other work on behalf of other constituents. And by the way, a lot of these agitators aren't even his constituents. They drive in from other places to make demands on his office. So the idea that that's going to work is antithetical to common sense. I'll never forget the teachers union here in Alabama. They hated me. And when I was in office, the first year I got my notice that it was my turn to come and speak to the local representatives of the teachers union, I thought, they give me a turn, like you show up? Well, that happened once. And then I decided, what am I doing here? Why would I even just show up on and I just let them know, I'm not available on that night, but if you'd like to schedule a time with my office, perhaps I can work with you. They never asked again.
Of course.
No, because they want it on their terms, and they want it when they want it, and they want you. It was less about trying to work with someone. It was more about trying to exert their authority.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. It's trying to intimidate everybody. I saw on, I think it's their Facebook page this week, how they have literally a protest scheduled every single day, all across Huntsville. And that's exactly it. It's just trying to exert authority, intimidate people, just so people bend the knee to exactly what these people want. And like you say, life just doesn't work that way. So they're going to have to get over it because it's not happening.
So they did come to Huntsville today. Did I hear you say 50? Was that off the air we were talking, or on the air? About 50 showed up?
Yeah, about 50 showed up outside Dale's office, from what I've been told.
Okay.
So they are showing up in numbers. They had a protest this weekend over something. I can't remember what that one was, but they had a pretty good number. I will give them credit. They're very good at getting people together for their cause. I don't know why these people were not working in the middle of the day today, but nonetheless, they had a lot of people show up.
Well, maybe they are, because maybe they're paid agitators.
Exactly.
And speaking of which, funded by George Soros.
Yes, funded by George Soros, funneled through Act Blue, which is already under scrutiny for all their foreign campaign violations.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff all, and good catch on your part. This hadn't even raised my visibility level until you sent it to me. And then, of course, you did your podcast. But I think this is one that bears watching. Let me ask you this real quick, and before we're done. Are these folks, how many of them are locals? Are they citizens? Do you know, or do they have leadership from outside that comes in and organizes? How does that work? Like your Moms for Liberty Madison. You live in Madison.
Right.
A little different.
I don't know for certainty. I have seen in some of their pictures it's local people. But now is the leadership local? Are they all from here? That part I don't know. But there are some local people that are a part of the efforts because we've recognized faces in it.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, somebody called the show a little while ago and wanted to be put on the air to tell me what I need to ask Congressman Strong when he comes on the air, and it smacked a lot of somebody from Indivisible trying to call in.
Oh, that's funny.
It was totally off topic, but I think they missed the whole point. I mean, the old thing about, well, they work for us. Yes, in essence they do. You know what? They also have schedules, and they have other constituents, and they have places they have to be on time, and they have votes they have to cast. And I'm not trying to apologize. I mean, I get frustrated with the Democrats as much as they get frustrated with Republicans, but I'm not gathering up 50 people and marching on their office and demanding to interrupt their day and be heard right then and there about their demands and be angry when I do it. I mean, that's just, there's nothing about that makes sense. I had a guy, well, I had it all the time actually, but I remember, I'll never forget, I had a guy call me at, I want to say, I'm an early person. I mean, I'm up at the, butt crack a lot of times. I mean, this morning is like 4:30, but I got a guy call me at 4:15 in the morning one time and wake me up. And I answered the phone. I don't know why I answered it, but I answered it because I thought it must be something super important because they're calling me at 4:15 in the morning. And this guy goes, "There's Phil Williams," because the teachers union always thought it was great. They would publish my cell phone number. They didn't know that I gave it to everybody anyway. And I said, "It is?" And he goes, "Yeah, I want to know why you think you can do this and this and this down yonder in Montgomery." And I said, wait. Why are you calling me at 4:15 in the morning? Because that's when I'm up. I said, well, there's a thing called office hours. And I hung up on him.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still procedure, protocol, decorum. And oh, by the way, anger, if you don't have morality attached to it, really doesn't work.
Yep. It just makes people dig their heels in that much more.
All right. Keep us posted on this. And if you hear more, text me or call back in. All right.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Emily Jones, appreciate you. See you. Yeah, that's, listen, grassroots, I don't mind it. Grassroots is built on nothing but anger and fear and loathing. I'm not a fan. Not a fan at all. There's a way to be productive and firm. And yes, I know that Jesus overturned the money changers' tables, but you know what? He had a morality attached to it. He had a righteous indignation. And that is not what they have here. Because when they come at these things with an immoral position already, and then they couple it with nothing but fear and loathing and stoking people with anger, it does nothing to benefit the overall situation. There's no way to have discourse at that point. Why should we want to stop what we're doing as an elected official and pause our day and say, "Hi, thank you all the angry people who are breaking things in my lobby and disrupting life and scaring my secretary and keeping me from meeting with other constituents who actually had scheduled appointments with me. What can I do for you? I'd love to help." No, nobody in their right mind is going to take that meeting. You can go pound sand, literally, and then go back outside and say, "I wouldn't meet with you." Well, by God, I wouldn't meet with you. And I'll hold a press conference later on to tell everybody why I wouldn't meet with you, because you're a bunch of jackwagons and you don't know how to act. Because you're like a bunch of petulant children that think you can do this and throw tantrums. It doesn't work like that. That's not real life. Be an adult. It's not hard. Well, I guess for some it is. There's a thing called maturity missing also. Take me to a break, brother. You can tell I've dealt with some of these folks before. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, speaking from experience. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. All right, so we got more stuff on this. So this group Indivisible out there. Let me just tell you, 1819 News had a piece on them because, yes, they have been making waves here in Alabama. This is Dateline 2 days ago. It says the headline is from 1819 is far left Soros-backed Indivisible is behind the AstroTurf-generated call for Alabama congressional town halls. What that headline is basically can be interpreted as is, yes, they are a far-left group. Yes, they do get money from George Soros's organizations. And yes, when it says AstroTurf-generated calls, that means they're fake. They generate the idea of fake uprisings, like there's a vast number of people that demand you attend. Well, anyway, the bottom line is no. They have all kinds of things on their website. They have the Musk or Us Town Hall Recess Toolkit that gives you all the things you need to yell at your elected officials when you get a chance. And they're saying things like, we are calling on every Republican to host a public town hall and face their constituents whose benefits they're pushing to eliminate. Shut up. But the reality is, Indivisible is very much a minority. They're just working to be a squeaky wheel and invent the clickbait opportunity. By the way, I got to say, can I just jump in there and say, I am going to go ahead and apologize to Chris from Athens. You're laughing. I see you over there, the far side of the studio laughing. I am apologizing to Chris from Athens. He called in earlier, and it was off topic at the time, but he heard that Congressman Dale Strong is scheduled to be on tomorrow, and he wanted to call in with, and I immediately assumed it was one of these Indivisible people saying, tell Congressman Strong. No, it was Chris called back a minute ago, heard me talking to Emily Jones, said, I'm a big fan of the show, and I just want to know if Space Force was coming. I was immediately feeling bad about it. So, Chris, you are much loved. Thank you very much. Please receive my apologies. But the reality is, I don't know, and we'll try to ask you about Space Force tomorrow. That's just funny. But yeah, so right now what's happening is all the Doge cuts. The Doge cuts have got the left up in arms. Story here from AL.com, which, Phil, did you go to AL.com? I did. AL.com, the liberal rag of Alabama. AL.com, as the March 22nd town hall in Athens approaches. And it talks about how there's people that want Dale Strong to appear, but he's prepared to leave an empty chair there in his place if he doesn't. Well, do you know what Congressman Strong's schedule is? Is he even in town that day? You don't know. By the way, March 22nd is over the weekend, I believe. Anyway, the congressman's office answered the calls and said he does prioritize making himself accessible to constituents through roundtables, mobile office hours, telephone town halls. But what you're asking for here, let's keep this in mind too, what you're also asking for is for the congressman to show up for an ambush. That's what you're saying. We demand you appear in front of us so we can yell at you. Who's going to answer that call? Well, I will tell you I've done it. So there's that. I did do it. I think I said earlier I only went once or twice when the teachers union asked me to appear. The first time I didn't realize I was being asked to appear. The second time I realized, wait a minute, what are they saying? Your time to appear is so. I said, what do you mean my time to appear? I thought, you know what, I'm going to go one more time. I'm going to do this. And I had somebody go with me as a witness. And I walked in loaded for bear. But I didn't yell. I just stood there very calmly in front of them. And like one of them said, are you going to give us back the deductions you made us pay in for our retirement? And I said, no. And they just stood there looking at me. And I said, next question. And I, why would you not? And I said, well, let me explain it to you. And I told them how we were in budget deficit and how their retirement was due to collapse. And I showed them where their own RSA director, Bronner, had been the one who suggested that we raise the deductions. And one of them said, no one's ever told us that. I said, I know. And then I never came back because I didn't need to. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And, oh, yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Welcome to hour number 3 here on a Meatloaf Monday. It is, in fact, a Meatloaf Monday. It's always about the food, right? But we're also thankful for the meals that we get. So there's that. Okay, so I'm going to finish up this section on Indivisible. So yes, this group is a left-wing activist group. They are. Our friend Emily Jones has labeled them the new BLM. What that means basically is they are the new darling of the left. They can do no wrong. They can get away with stuff and no one questions it. It's weird. Like, how in the world is the left allowed to burn things and to shout people down and to create mayhem and just get away with it? Just, like, hey, remember during COVID? When people were being arrested for going to the beach and sitting by themselves in the sand. Remember that? People were being told they couldn't go to church. You couldn't go to work. Businesses were being shut down, labeled non-essential by government, and yet BLM was allowed to openly riot in the streets, and that was okay because it was a necessary way of venting their anger.
What was the one story of the surfers had to be brought in because they were surfing out
Yes.
during COVID? It's like that
was in California, wasn't it?
Yeah, they're miles away from everybody else.
Unreal. It was just jackassery. But so Indivisible appears to be in many ways like the new BLM. Now, what do we know about them? Well, we know several things. Like, for instance, right now, they are helping to fund the Tesla protests. Fund them? What are we saying here? Well, I've got a copy of it straight off their website. They are literally offering to reimburse protesters who will fight back against Musk, to include protesting at Tesla dealerships, which, by the way, is a private sector business, which has nothing to do with anything to do with Doge, except that Tesla is a company owned by Elon Musk. Don't you remember back when Elon Musk was just the darling of the left? He was the guy. He was the man. He was going to save the world with electric vehicles. Don't you understand? It's Elon Musk. And then all of a sudden he's a Republican and likes Trump. Well, now we're going to go start setting fire to, Tesla charging stations, throw rocks through the windows at Tesla dealerships, terrorize people. I've got 2 articles here. One's from the Free Beacon. One is from an online source that I picked up through Twitter, both of which are talking about the fact that Indivisible is now offering to pay up to $200 for people's protest expenses when they go to the Tesla town halls. If they need things like audio and video equipment, signage, promotional materials, and gas to get there, and they're basically saying, you send us the receipts and we'll pay you back up to $200. Where are they getting their money from? Well, what we do know is that George Soros's organizations gave upwards of $7.5 million last year to help fund the organization. Well, where'd they come from? Well, they were founded by a couple of members, Ezra Levine and Leah Greenberg and Angel Padilla, all who have ties to George Soros's organizations, and all of which, by the way, I believe are former Clinton employees. Tells you a lot, doesn't it? So what we're seeing here is an organized effort to do things like, I don't know, why don't we go disrupt town halls? So I thought you wanted town halls. No, we want to disrupt town halls. We want you to gather so we can show up and get some clickbait video out of it. So town halls like Republican lawmakers in Utah, California, Pennsylvania, Indiana, Michigan, Nebraska, in which they try to have a town hall and they can't because the good constituents who came to listen can't hear a thing because of all the screaming and shouting going on by Indivisible. Politico reports also that local activists shouted down Representative Justin Amash, from a Republican from Michigan, that Representative Tom McClintock, Republican from California, had to be escorted out under security because of protesters. One CNN report showed the disruption of a town hall meeting by Jason Chaffetz, And this article, by the way, I'm looking back, is going back a few years here because Jason Chaffetz is not in office anymore. But that's the way they work. That is absolutely the way they work. And it's just really not worth giving them the time of day. They might make hay. They might get some good clickbait and some followers, and they might raise a lot of money because that's what they really are in it for. They raise a lot of money. But the truth is, those tactics don't change things. You want to organize something, organize the vote. You want to organize something much larger and of meaningful scale. You want to do something, you begin to influence as opposed to shout down, because all you're doing here is just trying to make life miserable. Their goal right now is actually to make life miserable for anybody Republican. That's what it is.
They don't actually want Dale Strong to show up. They want to have an empty seat knowing he won't show up to try to shove it in his face. Like, he's scared. No, I guarantee you, if it was a civil environment where they put it on the schedule months ahead and it was like a forum where they can actually discuss, then maybe Dale Strong would show up to that. But if it's a thing where there's just going to be combative and last second where he's already got something else on the schedule, obviously he's not going to cancel his schedule to show up because it's not productive. So they don't even want him to show up, I don't think. They just want him to not show up to try to say that he's scared. And I mean, like I said, it's just not productive. It's just for show.
Perfect. All right, let me get a few text messages before we go to the break. Matt from Madison says, if my texture will work, all of a sudden I'm buffering.
I got it for you if you want.
Matt from Madison, what you got?
He said, how about if those judges are so concerned about their rights, talking about the judge trying to block the deportation flights, send the judges too so they can make sure none of their rights get violated on the way back.
The judges don't want to run the risk of suddenly having their head shaved and thrown into the wrong cell.
Yeah, I would say.
All right, keep going, man.
Well, mine's buffered too, so there we go. I think our text line's down.
Did our text line just go down?
Probably.
Well, I'll be John Brown. All right. Listen, we're going to do this. I'm going to be working to get our text lines back up. In the meantime, we're going to be switching gears here in a minute. Military reckoning. There's a lot of things happening with the military. Dipper number 3 is going to focus on the military. All of you green suiters out there who can hear what we're talking about today that are still active at places like Redstone Arsenal, Anderson Army Depot, Maxwell Air Force Base, over yonder in Fort Benning. Yes, I called it Fort Benning, Georgia. There's a lot of change going on. And I'm curious if any of you want to call in or, well, hopefully text in. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, I got it back up.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to call in or text in, I'm going to be curious to hear if military members and or veterans or families of military members feel like the changes are positive, or if you're worried about things that are going on in the DOGE efforts and in the restructuring of all that we have going on with the DOD right now. What do you got, man? Give me some more text messages for the break.
Chris from Athens says, Colonel/Senator Williams, I appreciate the apology, but if JP is the call screener and since he assumed I was a crazy Democrat, well, you know what they say about assuming. I didn't assume. I said this guy wants to give you a question for Dale Strong, and then you're the one that thought he was indivisible.
JP, well, you know what? I was about to not throw you under the bus until you decided to point your finger at me like that. No, man, it was all me. It was all me. JP has been known to put people on whether I want them on or not. So
hey, I used to work for Dale Jackson where every call was an accepted call.
That's because Dale Jackson lives off of that kind of stuff. He doesn't have content. He just has stuff. All right, what else you got?
Jay from Hartselle says, the folks showing up to those town halls already have their minds made up. You can't reason with them, so it's a big waste of time. Kind of like watching The View. You will be dumber for it.
Kind of like watching The View, you'll be dumber for it. I think I love that. All right, what else you got?
Allie from Athens texted and she said, breaking news. I just received a press release from Secretary of State Wes Allen's office celebrating the fact that the lawsuit against him with regard to voter integrity has been completely dismissed.
Woo!
So there's some breaking news there.
I may have to get Wes Allen's office to get him on the show here shortly. All right. Any more for the break? We have about time for one or two.
Two more. David from Tuscumia says, wouldn't it be nice if somebody could arrange some of the Rightside ruffians to have a powwow with them at one of their meetings? Just saying peaceful powwow. That's what he said.
You know, there was a time when I was campaigning, actually, and I could smell something coming. There was a meeting, and I could sense from some rumblings on Facebook that the opposition was trying to stir something up for a meeting that I was planning to be at, a big town hall meeting. And so I told one of my guys, I said, you know what we need? We need just as many of our folks there as we can all wearing our T-shirts and outnumber them in the room. And we did, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was like put them in their place kind of fun.
Well, maybe we need a bunch of ruffians wearing their right side merch to show up to one of those.
You know what? Meetings. Put on your right side ruffian shirt and head on down. One more. What you got?
Lee from Huntsville says, Indivisible is trying to attack and bully their way into press covers. They don't really have an interest in question/answer session with Dale Strong. They want news coverage, video of them screaming in Dale's face, and it wouldn't serve Rep Strong at all to host a regular town hall in this environment.
Perfect. Take us to the break, JP. Perfect. All right. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, switching to the military reckoning. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, it's been a great show. I'm going to move into Dipper number 3. I'm getting all 3 of them done today. That doesn't always happen, by the way.
Triple Dipper Day.
It's a Triple Dipper Meatloaf Monday day.
You know, on St. Patrick's Day, it's kind of like a 4-leaf clover getting a Triple Dipper Day. It's rare.
Wow.
It's fitting there.
Wow. Okay. We just qualified for St. Patrick's Day points right there from John. All right. So I'm in number 3 of the Triple Dipper here in the latter portions of the first half of the third hour. How about that for a description? So how do you feel, by the way? I want to know. 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. There's a lot of y'all out there that are green suiters still on active duty, I know, or Guard and Reserve, or for that matter, you recently retired, or maybe you've got family members. Either way, what I'm saying is you are comfortably familiar with the culture and the fabric of our U.S. military. And we have some major military installations in this listening area. And I would love to know your thoughts as to what you think about the way things are going right now. Are we trending in the right direction? Do you like the changes you're seeing? Does it give you some concern or pause? Here's an example. And this is like an everyday event right now. I got a piece from the Federalist. Dateline over the weekend. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered a complete overhaul of a Pentagon think tank that infamously, not famously, but infamously, gifted lucrative contracts to a key player in the Russia collusion hoax. Here's the bottom line. Office of Net Assessment, that's the name of the organization. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has directed the disestablishment of the Office of Net Assessment and the development of a plan to rebuild it in alignment with DoD policies and priorities. So the bottom line is this. ONA, the Office of Net Assessment, was established like in 1973. And it was supposed to be able to give like think tank level white papers on long-term comparative assessments, they say. Things that the military would want to know, strategic thinking, globalization, all the things that we should know about, future trends in warfare and yada, yada, yada. There's a place for that. I get it. At that level, you should be reading stuff like that. You should become steeped in it. But the question is this one a think tank or was it just a pork belly project? Hegseth reportedly instructed the DoD's Performance Improvement Officer to reassign all civilian employees and to other mission-critical positions, and to also return all military personnel to their service branches for reassignment. One of the reasons why I think this is happening is there's a super contract that came out of ONA to a guy named Stefan Halper. Some of y'all know that name. Halper was one of those famous confidential human sources that the FBI used when they were targeting Trump during the Russia collusion campaigns. Things like, the recorded conversations with Carter Page and George Papadopoulos. I mean, this is going back a few years, but what I'm saying is what you're seeing right now is the abuse of the systems and the rewarding of people who helped with the Russia collusion is ending, and that's good. Within the context of all this, and by the way, the military is super busy. I mean, we're back to doing blow 'em up stuff. And it's not like I'm looking to have missiles launched every day. But I will say this. I love the fact that the Houthis are put on notice. And yes, I know that the Biden administration blew stuff up once in a while. But how many times did we waste our stores of ammunition on our fleet by launching what I would call counter battery operations as opposed to taking out the targets before they can shoot at us? Because when you know the poo, the point of origin, when you know the poo, that's what we called it. It's called the poo. You got the poo, the point of origin of indirect fire. You go and you take out the spot, because if you don't take out the poo, it just launches again. So this past weekend, the Trump administration put in a devastating barrage of attacks against Houthi rebels, and then turned right around and told Iran, and you better back off funding the Houthis and quit lighting them up like this because we're not going to stand for it. Immediately, the Houthis, trying to be big, said they were going to hereby disallow any U.S. ship to sail to the Suez Canal. Oh, okay. So now what we're saying is terrorist organizations are allowed to express their seizure of key transportation assets. Don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work. I don't see it. Go one step further. We also lit up an ISIS leader, took him out in northern Iraq, I believe.
By the way, I love how they just post like it. Some people may not like this, but I like that they actually post like the thermal, like them actually taking them out. Like, I don't know, that just shows like yeah, we did it, and we'll show you we did it. We don't care, Sort of we're actually gonna do military stuff, take out bad guys, and proudly do it. It's awesome.
Yeah, that has double effect. Number one, it's called bomb damage assessment. It's a confirmation of the kill, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But number two, the bad guys see that.
Exactly.
They're like, oh crap, we can't even drive down the road anymore.
Exactly. And like I said, some people may not like seeing that stuff, but I just appreciate, they're actually getting rid of the bad guys.
But Habib was driving by himself at night with his lights off. How did they find him? How did Habib get taken out? He was doing 70 miles an hour.
And just like how Soleimani was like a Nobel Peace Prize sort of guy too when we took him out last term, Yeah,
he's a peace-loving man. All that to say, there are definite military things happening. The mission of the military is certainly being advanced. We're also looking at right now, Trump has ordered the U.S. Navy to build more ships. What? Why is that a thing? Because it wasn't happening. The Chinese Navy is far outpacing us. Is it quality versus quantity? I can't speak to that entirely. I don't believe that the Chinese Navy has near the quality that ours does. But at the same time, we were being far outpaced in terms of quantity, and there has to be a bit of a comparison, all right? You can't just get outclassed completely because you laid down on the construction. And a part of that was because of the deep regulatory and bureaucratic nonsense that was blocking the shipbuilding. Trump's freeing that up. U.S. military, U.S. Navy ought to be seeing a few more warships hitting the waters. When we come back, though, I'll tell you, there's a push right now for Congress to grab hold of some of the changes and legislate them so they can't be undone by a future administration. I'll tell you about that in just a minute. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Whew, goes from Huntsville back all the way over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. I mean all the way down to that prettiest little town on the plains called Auburn, stretching across the border even to Fort Benning. Yes, I called it Fort Benning. And big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. All right, I'm in number 3 of the Triple Dipper here, the military reckoning. You know, the military is providing a reckoning on the world stage right now. By the way, that ISIS guy that we took out in Iraq the other day, he was ISIS's second in command. That was a big decapitation his name is al-Rifai, and he's considered the, quote, emir of ISIS. One of the senior decision-making members of the entire organization. He's the one who, quote, maintained responsibility for operations, logistics, and planning conducted by ISIS globally and directed a significant portion of their finances. So, yeah, taking him out, big doings.
I love it when Trump's in office and we actually go at the terrorists.
It's like watching the movie Tombstone versus watching Pee-wee's Playhouse. Mm-hmm. That's where it's been.
And they all try to buck up and realize, don't want to do that.
Yeah, I suggest don't.
Mm-hmm.
The Trump administration is being asked by Federalist, and I got a piece here, Dateline Saturday, to consider not only taking bold action in terms of the executive orders, but to work with Congress to get some of the military changes put into into the U.S. code, to have them basically codified through legislative action so that we can see these things permanently embedded and not have to deal with them being undone again. Like, for instance, one of which is, can we please codify the issues related to restoring meritocracy as opposed to idiocracy in the military? The DEI programs that we saw were not only wasteful, but they were morale killers. They guaranteed that sometimes your skin color meant promotion and sometimes it meant no promotion. That sometimes it meant hiring for DOD contracts or it was basically, it embedded every aspect. It was like saying that transgenderism was okay even though you're non-deployable. The DEI madness being taken out of the military to include our service academies is something that needs to be codified. How about this? Gender identity and common sense. That's another part of the article I'm looking at here. You may recall that there was an executive order called Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth. Well, what we're looking at there is you're not going to have to worry anymore about whether or not the female barracks is going to have dudes with their junk hanging out in the showers. It's not going to happen. That's been changed. All right, but it goes one step further. The other thing that needs to happen is an embedding or legislated action that says the gender dysphoria creates an inability to serve. If you believe that you're in the wrong body and you want treatment to change it, you're not going to get that paid for on the taxpayer dime, and you're not going to join the U.S. military and say, I'm now non-deployable because of all the treatments I'm letting the taxpayers pay for. And by the way, it also clearly means that you may have psychological issues. And what many people don't realize is that while the military does have standards, that some of those standards are actual psychological assessments. You are screened. And there are some jobs where you were screened very deliberately. You're not going to go into special operations without a psychological screening. You're not going to go into, some of the tier 1 units without having a serious psychological profile. Now, you're not going to get it for every Joe Snuffy the ragbag job in the Army, but the truth is there's going to wind up being some measure of, how would I word this, mental stability that has to be in place. And they're saying codify it. Okay, how about this? Affirming sound priorities and not critical race theory. We had cases of troops being required to do privilege walks in their units, like standing in formation saying, everyone who is white, take one step forward. That should never happen in the military. Never. The only thing you care about is the color of the uniform and the color of the flag, and that is it. And the very idea that this was happening on unit time. I mean, if you want to do this in your off time, more power to you. Just don't bring it to the barracks. But the idea that troops were being told to take privilege walks in their unit formations is just the most awful thing I think I've ever heard. And it was beyond that. It was critical race theory training. It was things like, I'm trying to think which one. I think it was the chief of staff of the Air Force, or was it the Navy? No, it was the Navy, who said we have too many white pilots. Oh, what you want is qualified pilots. You don't care what color their skin is. Because me as a ground pounder, when I'm on the ground and I'm calling in CAS, I need close air support. I'm not looking to see well, hang on a second. Do I have a black pilot or a white pilot, gentlemen? Because I need to know where the round. I'm saying put rounds on target. That's what I need.
Mark Milley and his white rage.
Oh, Mark Milley and his white rage. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So yes, critical race theory. Wait, where's my sound effect? A fuerte.
Afuera.
There it is. Thank you very much. Get it out of here. Codify those things. Make it real. Let me get a couple more of these. There's some talk about whether or not DOJ should look at a BRAC round. Whew. Having been through a BRAC round in my area, that's a little scary. Fort McClellan used to be a huge factor in Northeast Alabama. Fort McClellan is now gone, except for the National Guard Training Center that's still there. Large parts of Fort McClellan are still kind of shuttered and desolate, and it's sad. So I hate to see BRACs. But what I do know is this, and some of y'all know what I'm talking about. It's amazing how many military facilities that aren't being used are still being maintained for virtually no reason. And I don't mean like they've been repurposed or they're smaller in scale or they're, they've got some kind of toxic cleanup that has to happen because of weapons training and all that. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about sometimes it's office buildings in D.C. Sometimes it's going to be, training ranges that are no longer in use anymore. There's an estimated 26 million acres of real estate holdings by the DOD alone in the United States. And those that are no longer necessary, but we're still paying the power bill, might need to be looked at. And then Pete Hegseth did this. Today, defense.gov, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth ordered a department-wide review of existing standards set by U.S. military branches pertaining to physical fitness, body composition, and grooming, which includes but is not limited to beards. Oh, Lord, he's getting back to it. He's looking at it saying, you know what? If you're going to be a robust organization, you're going to have standards. And if you're going to have standards, standards have to be enforced. If you don't enforce them, they truly aren't standards. So his words were, we must remain vigilant in maintaining the standards that enable the men and women of our military to protect the American people and our homeland as the world's most lethal and effective fighting force. The review will now determine how the department has maintained those levels of standards over the recent past and the trajectory of any change in those standards. What he's looking at here is the whole idea that, well, if you want to have a beard, you can do that. Now, I had a beard when I was in Afghanistan, but I was on a special operations team in a remote environment with official relaxed grooming standards because we couldn't even bathe. I mean, I didn't take a shower for like 6 months. I had to dip water into a bucket and bathe. But so there wasn't a whole lot of shaving going on. That's different. When you're in garrison, I mean, gone are the days, but some of y'all remember, I used to love breaking starch on a good set of BDUs. And even the OGs, I mean, the olive drabs, the jungle fatigues from Vietnam era, I came in on the tail end of that and I got to wear them a little bit. And you starch those bad boys, man, and you break starch for Garrison, and you got your Scare Me badges and your patches in place and everything's creased, and you put on that beret just right and your boots are shined, there's an entire army out there that's never had to do any of that. They're wash and wear. They just pull them out of the dryer, shake them off, and put them on, and they don't always look like they care. And I'm for getting back to a little bit of a standard. And that might include shaving and haircuts and beards, right? There's a whole lot of other things going on, but I got a ton of text messages. Let me get a few of these text messages real quick, because some of y'all are checking straight on in about some of the stuff.
If you want to read Nathaniel from Huntsville, he texted about the beards, actually.
Did he? Nathaniel from Huntsville? Welcome to the text line, Nathaniel. Brand spanking new in the text line. He said, recently retired after 21 years in the Army, and I think the DOD is headed in the right direction. While I think beards would be a good thing, I think that would be a tough balance, and it's not the time to implement more liberal changes. Enforcing uniformity, physical fitness, and a lethal mindset is what we need, and I'm glad to see what Secretary Hegseth is doing. Nathaniel from Huntsville. Nathaniel, first of all, welcome to the Rightside Ruffians text line. We appreciate you. And oh, by the way, thanks for your service. 21 years. That's awesome. Enjoy your retirement. And if you're like most of us, you retired to go to work. Mark from Red Bay says, why would the Chinese have quality warships? Everything they build and send over here is junk. Yeah, but they're sending it to us.
That's it. And the ships are not quality, they're quantity. So.
Yeah. Marcus from Huntsville says, you have not lived until you've taken a warm water bird bath while crouching down in a freezing cold trailer getting drips of warm water because the pump died in the mountains of Afghanistan. LOL. Brother, I am with you. And yes, that is absolutely where it was at. I mean, bathed in a bucket and crapped in a hole. That's what we did. Ate more rice and we had more soul. That's what I'm saying. Badger from Athens says, I was stationed at Reese Air Force Base when BRAC hit back in the late 90s. That was tough times, man. It was. It was tough for this part of Alabama, tough for other places too. Tommy from Muscle Shoals, Alabama says, my 22 years in the Army, we had affirmative action. We saw too many good NCOs passed over. Yep, I believe it. John C. from Madison said, I remember during the Obama administration that some units had it where they had to march in women's high heel shoes. What? I'd love to know about that. If you're saying that was like to make them feel like they were identifying with the women in the ranks, I want to know more. Paul from Decatur says, hey, Colonel, Paul in Decatur, unleash the special operations guys, snooping and pooping, snatch and grabs, and more. Whether they use the active units or National Guard units, less red tape with Guard units, my thoughts. Poppin' starch, yeah. Paul from Decatur, appreciate your service, and as always, I agree. I think absolutely. I think you ought to start seeing a little bit of this cartel action. Might have to involve some of our guys who sneak and peek pretty well. A little direct action. Ron from Brownsboro says, good luck clearing a pro mask with a beard. I'm saying, if we're going to say yes. So look, if you're going to put on a pro mask because, NBC warfare is still a thing, and you gotta be able to wear that protective mask, and it's got a seal around. Does it seal with a beard? Do you want to run that risk? Just saying. Do I have time for a couple more? Yeah, I do. David from Bucky says, Phil, as an old retired Army NCO, I always said I could never do it again during the Obama and Biden administration. However, with a new commander-in-chief, I like to think I could do it again if I was asked to. Now, let's change it back to Fort Rucker. That may happen. That may happen. David at Bucky's, I always appreciate your service, man. I told you about that. I went looking for David at Bucky's one time.
You were unsuccessful.
I know, I found him.
Oh, you did? Really?
Yeah, I started walking around the store. Excuse me, are you David? Excuse me. And then I was walking up. I was literally walking up to the counters, and I saw a guy standing there, and I thought, I'm going to bet. And I walked up. He had a badge on. I said, are you the David at Bucky's that listens to Rightside Radio? Yes, I am. We had a great little reunion there.
I wish when I was still working up in Huntsville, I'd stop by there and get a brisket every now and then. I wish I would have known David from Bucky's then. Maybe he could have got me a free brisket or something.
I imagine you'll travel back that way again sometime soon.
Probably.
All right, JP, take me to a break, brother. We'll take a break. We'll come right back. I got more text messages, and we'll clean up for the day. Y'all, it's Meatloaf Monday. Get yourself ready. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just using common sense like a superpower. Hey, I tell you who's apparently found some kryptonite. Jeff Rowe from Indiana, letting us know that he can't call in today because he's got laryngitis. Jeff Rowe, you get it fixed, brother. Gargle with that salt water, and you mix a little Red Ball Wixie with honey and heat it up, and it actually works. But just a tad. But anyway, blessings on you, brother. Get well. We'll talk to you soon, hopefully. By the way, today is St. Patrick's Day. And, among all of the other traditions that travel with St. Patrick's Day, there is one that many of us here in Alabama treasure. It's a legacy. It's actually not that old, but it has become a classic that we have to defer to occasionally. So I'm going to call an audible here and say we need to hear the broadcast about the leprechaun in Mobile. Play it.
Well, just in time for St. Patrick's Day, crowds are coming by the dozens to get an up-close view at what some say is a piece of Irish folklore.
Some people in the Crichton area of Mobile say a leprechaun is taking up residence in their neighborhood. A leprechaun. NBC 15's Brian Johnson has more.
Curiosity leads to large crowds in Mobile's Crichton community. Many of you bringing binoculars, camcorders, even camera phones to take pictures.
They were really there.
It look like a leprechaun to me. All I gotta do is look up in the tree. Who else seen the leprechaun? Say yeah!
Eyewitnesses say the leprechaun only comes out at night. If you shine a light in its direction, it suddenly disappears. This amateur sketch resembles what many of you say the leprechaun looks like.
It's a pencil sketch.
Others find it hard to believe and have come up with their own theories and explanations for the image.
My theory is it's casting a shadow from the other limb.
Could be a crackhead that got hold to the wrong stuff. And it told me to get up in a tree and play a leprechaun.
Get down to the bottom of this. Yeah, still down there, guy. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, man.
This guy helping to direct traffic says he's prepared for his encounter with the leprechaun. He's suited up from head to toe.
This wars off spells right here. This is a special leprechaun flute, which has been passed down from thousands of years ago from my great-great-grandfather who was Irish. I just came to help out.
Others just came to get lucky in hopes a pot of gold may be buried under this tree.
I'm gonna run a backhoe and uproot that tree. I want to know where the gold is. I want the gold. Give me the gold. I want the gold.
This is Brian Johnson, NBC 15 News.
People will do anything for a pot of gold.
I'd forgotten.
You know what I like? I like the amateur sketch of the leprechaun.
Oh,
like somebody got a really good look at it and got that good drawing.
Oh, go ahead and cut it. That is such a classic. Y'all, that is real, by the way. I remember when that was live.
If they haven't seen the sketch, they got to look it up.
Oh, the sketch is like
a third grader.
Yeah, it's like a stick figure. It's a stick figure of a leprechaun. They got the hat down pretty well, though.
Yeah, that's about it.
Oh my gosh. Oh, okay, I just reposted that one to my Twitter feed too. If you want to go check it out at Phil Williams, you can check it out. But oh, my gosh. Hey, listen, we got a lot of things going on here at Rightside Media. Rightside Media is the parent company of Rightside Radio. Last night, the latest edition of the Controversial Mom podcast came out. Today, the latest edition of the Out of Right Field sports podcast with JP came out.
By the way, those shows are now on the podcast lineup, audio podcast, for where you listen to the show every day. So if you want to go check out the newest ones on there, yes.
That's great. All right, listen. I'm telling you, we got it all going on around here, but it's all because of y'all. And do not forget, there are indeed more of us than there are of them. God is still very much on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.